Perhaps you are someone who finds it challenging to say no to others and yes to you. Perhaps you often feel conflicted and frustrated when it comes to wanting to take care of others and not being able to take care of yourself, your dreams, and your energy. If so, this Doodle-to-Doing is for you. Welcome everyone to Doodle-to-Doing. I'm your host, Karen Light, Doodle Empress, aka artist and creative coach at How Doodle, where I support people in becoming empowered creative leaders in their life and work. This one is for the good girls, those of us who have internalized society's messaging that you must serve everyone before yourself, that you must be nice and accommodating and make sure everyone likes you. It can affect you at home and at work, feeling like a weight is constantly on your shoulders. If you got this far, your interest is probably sparked because you either are worn out and wondering if there's another way, or you're continuing to do the deep work necessary to stop living from the good girl mentality. My guest, Linda Katz, yay, is here to lead us into this juicy and meaningful topic. Together, we will dive into how we can let go of being the good girl without letting go of our hearts. Let's doodle to doing actions that create more sustainable life, where we can thrive for ourselves and others, where we become the leaders at home and at work that inspire and serve in much more effective ways. Welcome, Linda, and welcome,
Hello.
Doodlers. Thanks for being here, everybody. Yay.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right, everybody, it's time to get started with some intention. We got the spirit of a doodle to help us in our intention making process today. So go ahead, read through, say the phrase that's jumping out to you today.
Have fun. Forget outcomes.
Let's see what happens.
Enjoy the process.
Let's see what happens.
I'm going with be in the moment. So as you see, the spirit of a doodle says nothing that you have to be a talented artist. It says nothing about skill or experience in the art realm. It's all about letting loose, having a little fun with this artistic expression that anyone can do. So whatever phrase jumped out to you today, go ahead and write it on your paper for yourself, because I want you to stay centered in this throughout the whole process. So it's easy to get knocked off kilter and start feeling like we have to force something or it needs to be good. And we need these little reminders to keep letting it go, keep playing and experimenting like a doodle would want us to. Everybody got it written down?
Mhm.
We're good? All right, let's do a little warm-up shape. And you'll see why I'm warming you up with this shape later on. So somewhere on your paper, I would like you to go ahead and just draw a very simple, like in 2 seconds, sort of a mountain shape, whatever that means to you, just a little mountain shape. When you got your mountain shape, you can just hold it up. I like just seeing the variety that comes out, even with one simple instruction. It's beautiful, all different. None of these look the same. All right, so now I'm going to encourage you for a few minutes. I just want you to continue to play with that shape in whatever way it calls to you. We're just warming up our doodling muscles, getting things loosened up so that we can go into bigger doodles later. But maybe something appears within your mountain. Maybe you have no idea and you just do polka dots around it. That's what's happening for mine right now. Maybe they've got all kinds of things showing up on the outside of your mountain. Who knows? And as you're doodling, I want you to contemplate what brought you here today. What's a little curiosity you have? And as a curiosity comes to mind, I invite you to write it out for yourself, because we're going to return to it later. So I invite you to hold your doodle up. Be so brave and bold as to do that, to show us your mountain. You can say your name and where you're calling in from or zooming in from. You can do it right now. Jackie's like, yeah, I'm bold. I'm brave. I think Nilly was on her. Everybody's like, yes, doodles. I'm up. I'm game. I like it. Good energy today. If you would like to, I'd love to hear your curiosity. What brought you here today? I'm sure Linda would as well. So I'll get this show on the road. I'm going to spotlight everybody as we do it so we can see each other's stuff. So I'm Karen, as I said before. Here's the mountain doodle I was working on. I am zooming in from Cincinnati, Ohio. And my question that came up was, how can I evoke more wild woman throughout the day? That was my curiosity.
That's cool.
Sometimes we have these lovely times where we talk about it and it's awesome, or we go outside and we're in the woods and we're like, yeah, I feel wild. And then like we get back to our office space or our desk and suddenly we're like, let's do what I should do and the list and all that stuff. So that's my curiosity. Who else would like to introduce themselves? Jack Keen?
I'm Jacqueline. I'm from Cincinnati. And my question of curiosity was, am I a good girl?
Ooh,
Mm.
I like that question. Let's find out, shall we?
Yeah.
All right, who else?
I'll go next. I'm Laura, and I'm in Ithaca, New York. And my question is very similar to yours, Karen, which is, how can I let my wise and wild woman run the show more of the time?
Yes. That's such a good one. All right, who else is up?
I didn't come up with the question. My name is Nili Dora Ella, and I'm calling from Israel, Haifa, Israel for that. But as you were talking, I'm focused. I mean, I'm trying to figure out a lot. I mean, as nice girl as being a strategic mechanism for like the phone response in trauma. Like, how can I let go of that phone response? So
Yes, very good. I love that question. Thank you. And I love your doodle. All right.
I can go.
Yeah.
So here's my mountain. And my question was, how can I embody the wise and wild woman while I'm teaching about it? So instead of teaching from up here, how can I teach from here?
Yeah.
So good. Oh, I love that question. I've been in so many teacher workshops where they're like talking about engagement, but they're like the most boring workshops I've ever been. How are we talking about engagement right now? You're not engaging me. Like,
Yeah.
walk the talk. How do we do that more? Yes.
So I'll go. If you like. This is my mountains here. So my name is Vanessa Calfinatio. I'm zooming in from Mexico, from the Yucatan, the Caribbean. And actually today I don't have a question. I'm just kind of excited about being here, and I'm just letting the happiness kind of go over the mind. I'm always trying to think and analyze, and today I'm just happy and see what comes out of this. I'm just really, really excited to be here no matter what.
Sounds like a nice wild woman attitude.
Yeah.
Totally.
I love that, no good girl thing. Like, I'm not doing a question.
Exactly.
Screw that, I'm just having fun.
I said her, no, she did that all on her own. That was amazing. Very cool. All right, well, I want to introduce our guest a little bit further, and we're going to dive into this juicy topic. Linda Katz is a writer, dream worker, women's coach, and Koya-inspired movement teacher. She guides women in dismantling the inner cage of their obedient good girl and hyper-productive tyrant king to reclaim the freedom, enlivenment, and natural rhythms of the wise and wild woman within. Part of unearthing this energy is remembering to fall in love with the journey as much as we look forward to arriving at the destination, whatever it may be, rather than pushing ourselves up mountain after mountain. See, the mountains are coming back. Wait. We sit for a spell, enjoy the view, make an altar, or maybe even descend into the valley of the wild feminine soul. So during our interview today, we'll be taking pauses for some doodling. So keep your paper and doodling utensils ready. Remember your intention, the spirit of a doodle, so you can always come back to that. And if you're stuck, just like, you can always scratch more on that mountain that we're talking about. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or there will be time at the end to discuss everything in our larger discussion. All right, so welcome, Linda. Let's spotlight you.
Hello.
And yes, all right. So you talk about this good girl mentality a lot in your work. We're even talking about it already in our podcast. And you also work with people who identify in that way. But let's just back up to people who might not quite get what you mean. Can you explain what the good girl mentality is?
Yes, I can. So I think what I'd like to start with is that the good girl is an energy. That's how I consider her, not an identity. And I think that it's important to remember that, because when we make it our identity, it can feel like it's written in stone. It can feel like it is who we are, rather than it's an energy that can move through, and then it's an energy that can move out, and it can happen rather quickly. So as an energy, she is an energy of obedience and compliance. So some of the ways that you might see yourself behaving, believing things when you're in this energy would be, you believe that you always have to put others' needs and desires ahead of your own, that you always have to sacrifice yourself for relationship. And the key word there is always, right? Because there's beauty in putting other people ahead of ourselves. Like, we don't want to swing from one side of the pendulum to the other, right? But it's when we do it, when there's not a choice, when we don't feel like there's a choice to be had there. So that's one of the keys. She can be very perfectionistic, and her ideals for goodness are often unattainable for human beings. Right? So it's the perfect goodness, which is also why when we are in this kind of good girl energy, we tend to not feel good enough, because how can we, when we've set our ideals up here, and what we expect from other people is often quite different from what we expect from ourselves, right? We can tolerate the mess in others. They get to be human, great. But when it comes to us, no, that is way too uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, I identify with everything you're saying so hard. I know I got one. I know I got her. She comes and
I was like, so do I. Very familiar with this energy, let's be honest.
Some clarity here.
She's very concerned in other pieces, that she's very concerned with how other people see her. So when we're in the good girl, we're very worried about how we're coming across, because our locus of validation exists outside of us rather than it being planted within. So what other people think of us becomes the most important. And she also feels that, right, by staying small, that's how we stay safe. By kind of hiding, by staying invisible, oftentimes by just blending into your surroundings, a bit of the chameleon aspect, right? That's how we can stay safe. But then we also aren't able to put ourselves and our true voice out into the world and into our relationships and into our work. So those are just a few of the kind of symptoms, I guess, that you can look for to see, okay, am I coming from my good girl energy? And there's this kind of thing in the coaching world, like how you do one thing is how you do all things. And I'm just going to say that I don't find that to be true. And there will be certain situations, certain relationships where the good girl energy might come in more strongly, depending upon conditioning, where you're more comfortable. For some people, it might be with, the closer the relationship. With some others, it might be that people who are further away, like people that you don't know. And so just noticing that the good girl, again, she can pop up in certain situations. And that's the invitation to get curious, like, okay, why? What is it about this relationship? What is it about this situation that's triggering this response?
It's such a relief to hear you talk about it as this energy, that can just come and go. Like, we're not stuck with anything. That's not all that we are, like we're so complex with so many things. And when I think about it as energy, and then I think about being curious, it's like, oh, that curiosity alone I think can just shoo, like,
Yes.
you know, and that word choice, when you are feeling like you have to, it's like, oh, what's going on? Curious.
Yes.
Let's get
And I'll
curious.
say that she's only one part of what I call the inner cage. So I tend to work a lot with the good girl energy because I think it's also quite known and understood in our culture. But there's actually two other parts of the inner cage that I'll just touch upon briefly.
Yeah,
So the other one is what I call her shadow sister, who's the rebel. So the rebel is everything that the good girl is not. And what we see is oftentimes as we become aware of good girl patterns in ourselves, we can also see this kind of happening collectively right now. There's a lot of people talking about the good girl, and then there's a lot of this kind of corresponding rebel energy, which shows up in, you know, kind of like zero fucks given, right? Like, I'm such a badass. I don't care what anyone thinks of me. And there could be this like hardness around it, right? And we swing from one to the other. And the rebel, whereas the good girl complies, the rebel defies. And it can be easy to think that the rebel is the wise and wild woman, right? Because she tastes like freedom at first, especially if we're coming out of a good girl pattern for a long period of time. But the rebel still has to define herself by who she is in opposition to, right? It's still a reaction rather than it's coming from within. So when we take away what the rebel is defying, she often has no sense of where to go, right? When we're in that energy, we still don't know because we need the thing that we're pushing against. And so kind of borrowing this mountain metaphor, which I just realized, right, is that I kind of think of them as a triangle, which kind of looks like a mountain, where it's like the bottom is the shadow sisters of the good girl and the rebel, and at the top is the tyrant king. And the tyrant king is a dysfunctional, kind of unbalanced masculine energy. It is an energy of productivity and doing that has been severed from its connection with the feminine. So it means that our doing comes at the cost of our being, our well-being. It comes at the cost of our bodies. It comes at the cost of our relationships with other people, with Mother Nature on a larger scale, right? So the tyrant king is kind of the pinnacle, and it's the consciousness of the tyrant king is very either or. It's black or white. You can be one or the other. And so we can see how this also keeps us swinging from the good girl or the rebel. You can either choose yourself or you can choose other people. You can either be good or you can be bad, right? There's no space for both, and there's no gray area. And we'll know that we're under the spell of the tyrant king when we are shooting all over ourselves. When we are in this constant, like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and we're keeping ourselves very much on the straight and narrow throughout our day. Mm-hmm. And that's a very brief, I could go on and on about these energies, so I'm going to stop there, but that's kind of a brief overview to see the landscape of what I call the inner cage.
Yes. Thank you so much for giving even a fuller picture of that, because we can see, probably all of us, we can feel all those shifts in ourselves. Like, we feel all of that energy and like trying to navigate it. And how do we come out whole instead of split in one of those ways, which I think is probably where we're coming to with the wild woman, like our wholeness. But let's pause and do a doodle here, everybody. So I'm going to put 1 minute on the timer, and I'm going to invite you to think about your good girl that's inside of you. She's just a little inner, she's one of the many characters inside of you, right? Just for 1 minute, doodle what she might look like. Doodle what comes out for you when you see your good girl inside of you. not going to discuss them yet, but let's just give each other a glimpse of what our good girls are looking like, because there is probably so much variety, even in the good girl. Ah, yes. Yeah. Oh, they're good. They're juicy. Let's see what we can do about that good girl as we continue on here. Okay, so you have explained this stuff beautifully. Obviously, you've had probably some personal experience, I'm going to guess. I feel like most of us have. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story. How did you move into this work and start working with others around this idea?
Yeah. So I think if you would have asked me 10-ish years ago if I was a good girl, I would have said, hell no. I am not a good girl. I thought the good world was boring, but now I considered myself to be an artist, right? I saw myself more as this rebel, like bucking the status quo. But even though that's how I like to imagine myself in my embodied lived experience, that was very much not the case. As the straight A student who always did what I was expected to do, who was, the perfect daughter and the good employee, and always, I wasn't really present in my life in a lot of ways because I was always chameleoning myself, right? I would change a little bit of who I was depending upon who I was around, which is also a very kind of indicative of the good girl energy, as we kind of pick up on what aspects of us other people respond well to, and then we just bring those forth. But over time, I started to lose touch with who I actually was. Like, what do I love? What do I desire? Who am I? And it wasn't until it was probably about 10, 12 years ago at this point that I remember I had this moment where I woke up and I was like, I started to look around at my life and realize how far from myself I had wandered. Like, I had made the choices to get there, but it did not feel like my own. Like, my life did not feel like it was a reflection of me. And because we're such an externally focused society, I looked around and I saw all of these things that I was like, cages that are keeping me caged in. And so it was like, I ended the relationship. I decided to like quit my job doing technical writing, and I pursued coaching full time. My husband and I moved from LA to Austin. I made new friends. I picked up new hobbies, all in this effort because I wanted to find this kind of wildness, this authenticity, this me. Like, I wanted to reconnect with me. And in 2015, I had changed everything in my life, pretty much. All of the main pillars were different than they were 5 years beforehand. And yet I still felt the same. And that was when I started to work with my longtime mentor, Leanne Raymond. I found Koya, which is one of the central tenets of Koya is it doesn't matter what it looks like, it matters how it feels to you, which as a recovering good girl was something that hearing it over and over was this invitation to, rather than self-objectify and look at my life as if it wasn't mine, was to bring myself back home and begin to experience life from the inside out. And slowly, through working with my own wise woman mentor, through Koya, I began to go on what I now call the heroine's journey of starting to come home to myself, starting to see for the first time, much to my chagrin, what a good girl I had been for so long. And, as can happen, once I was going through that journey, I was really hungry to share it with other women because I saw other women who were in a similar situation. And so often the solutions that we are sold are external. We want to change the external stuff in our life rather than recognize that sometimes the cage also exists within us.
Definitely. I mean, so much of your story resonates for me. I had a moment when I was going through my divorce a little over a decade ago where I was like, I've done everything right. Why is this happening? Like, it was that moment for me. Like, I was so angry because I had done everything right. So like, I had parents who married and divorced each other twice. So I had studied what it meant to be good in a marriage and like bent over backwards and did all the things, and then I just zoomed straight over to Rebel for about 4 or 5 years. Like, it was like, everything must go, nothing is staying, forget it. So like, don't talk to me. You don't like, it was total like dismantling every single thing. And maybe that's a phase that you kind of have to go through as on your journey. I'm not sure, but it was pretty destructive. But then you know both. I don't know. To me, I felt I knew both. Not that I've got this all figured out by any means, but like, at least I know both and I can play with both and wonder what it all looks like in the juicy,
Yes. Yeah, and I love what you shared there, just to say that I often say is that the rebel is like a pit stop on our wise and wild woman. So if we've been in the good girl, we need to integrate, right, that rebel, that strong back, like some of it, but sometimes we mistake the part for the whole. And then all of the things in the good girl, we just swing from one to the other. So it's like, how do we integrate the juiciness and the kind of chutzpah of the rebel with while retaining our softness at the same time.
Yes. Okay, before we dive deeper into that story, let's do another 1-minute doodle. For this doodle, I just want you to add to your good girl, whatever was resonating in Linda's story, or maybe it brought up something in your own story. Just add that to this good girl for a little bit. For 1 minute, add whatever comes up for you. So what have you seen and noticed in your work from your own life, but also I'm sure you hear these stories from so many people. What are the consequences? Like, what does a good girl's life take from her?
Well, I think that the biggest consequence, if we stay in the good girl, tyrant king kind of energy, because they tend to hang out together, is that we never get to live our own lives. And so one day we look up, kind of like that same moment where we realize that we made the choices, maybe, so at least some of them that have gotten us to this point, but our lives do not feel like they are reflections of who we are, of what truly matters to us, of what brings us to life. And the thing is, I feel like it sounds so nice, right? To like, oh, of course I want to live my own life. Duh. But it's really freaking hard. It's really hard to live our own lives because we have this kind of societal apparatus that praises and rewards us for the good girl and the tyrant king energies within us. So that is how we get the gold stars. And it becomes very easy to get hooked on that validation. And when that happens over time is we start to lose our own sense of inner motivation. So we lose our own sense of why we're doing things to begin with, because we're just looking for the next gold star. And so this starts in school, right? And then we can just see how, and oftentimes, not always, but a lot of times good girls are often excel in school. And then we bring this energy with us into our adult lives. And so rather than pleasing and achieving in school, pleasing the teacher, we now apply it to our boss. We might apply it to our colleagues. And again, the difficult part is that if we are in the good girl energy and the tyrant king energy, we will excel in the kind of structured hierarchical paradigms of our society. And so that's what also makes it difficult. It becomes like a closed feedback loop that makes it very difficult to leave. It takes a lot of kind of conscious muscle and discomfort to leave. And it's not until we do that oftentimes that's when, kind of like in my story, we start to realize that shit, I've integrated, like I've already internalized the voice of the tyrant king. So I don't need a teacher or a boss to tell me what I should and should not do anymore, because I have a voice in my own damn head that tells me what I should and should not be doing, right? We give ourselves gold stars, and we might think, oh, but isn't that good that we're giving ourselves the gold stars? And it's just, this kind of can open up into a larger topic, but there are other ways that we can relate to ourselves and one another beyond the kind of behavior paradigms of reward and punishment.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but it can be really deeply dissatisfying, right? As like you said, like we've done everything right. We've done what we were supposed to do. And then we don't feel the fulfillment, or it doesn't work out the way that we thought it would, right? Like I did all the things that I was supposed to do. But because we have this very external society, rather than turning inward at that point, is we either like buckle down and we're like, I just have to try harder. I just have to work more. Or we say like, well, I'm on the wrong mountain, so I just need to go to this other mountain instead. And we look for fulfillment on the other side of that summit. And because we have this kind of pain, no gain attitude a lot of times, which again is a bit of what I consider the tyrant king, that kind of dysfunctional masculine, there can be this belief that the more difficult and the more grueling the climb up the mountain, the more rewarding the summit will be. And so again, we get into this relationship of if it's really hard and if I work really hard, then it's going to be more rewarding at the top. And what happens instead is that all the joy, all the relaxation, all the juiciness of life seems to always be around the corner.
Yes.
And we never seem to get there. It's always beyond the next summit. And so I think that's kind of, in a nutshell, the perils, the consequence of living within this kind of good girl and tyrant king energies.
Yeah, right about the same time where I was having my like epiphany of doing all the right things and it not working, I read this book called Punished by Rewards. And I was a teacher at the time. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it to my kids. Like it was like this horrible. And then you realize you're just in the whole system of it. So you trying to do something is so difficult because the kids are with you like once. Well, I was an art teacher. They're with me once a week for 45 minutes. You know, like I can't undo the whole reward system of the school. And like, but I just, you start to see so clearly of how we just beat ourselves up for it, for that gold star that we now have internalized. And then it's so easy to pass it along. It's so ingrained that that's the right way to show anybody that you care, that they did a good job, you know, and it's such a confusing place to be. We're not going to doodle, but I want you to do one more thing. Well, kind of a doodle. I want you to doodle a speech bubble coming out of your good girl for a second. And I want you to just, what is one thing that good girl is saying to you right now? What is one thing, that speech bubble? Okay, so it is time, Linda, now for you to give us the description of the wild, wise woman. Tell us about that. I'm ready to hear about her.
You're like, yes, please. Enough of the good girl. Enough of the tyrant king. Enough of the cage.
Yep.
Okay. I bet you just take a deep breath for a second. Like, maybe bring your energy, like so much, right? Again, we are up here. So bring it down into the heart, into the belly for a second, just into the hips. Maybe wiggle your butt a little bit in your seat. You can even just keep your eyes closed if you want. So the wise and wild woman is you. She is you at your most real, your most human, your most alive, your most natural. She already lives within you. She is not out there somewhere. She is not at the summit of yet another mountain. She is just buried under the cultural conditioning that taught you who you had to be approved of, and get those gold stars. She is the voice of intuition that comes to you in your dreams, the voice of the instinctual knowing of your body, the integration of all of these different aspects of you into a greater whole. She is the movement of your emotions, the beauty of your imagination. She holds that both and, that knows that you don't have to be one or the other. You can be both the rebel and the good girl. We all are anyway. You can be both the fool and the wise woman. That we don't have to split ourselves apart in that way. And when we start to see ourselves, when we start to see our lives through her eyes, it takes on this dimension of magic and mystery and meaning. And you can almost hear how when I start to talk about the wise and wild woman, the cadence of my voice changes and it becomes a bit flowery, right? The language becomes a bit more poetic. And I feel like that is because so often, if we try to define her too specifically, we kill her essence, right? It's like I always come back to this image of the butterfly, which has intrigued me for years and years and years, right? What happens when we pin the butterfly to the wall with its wings just fully visible, right? We smother some of the beauty by making it so known. And rather, the beauty of the butterfly is in its movement, right? It's in the way that it flitters on the wind and lands on the flower, and we can see it, and now we don't. And so the same is true for the wise and wild woman. When we bring a lot of that analytical energy of the tyrant king, right? We kind of smother her. So instead, rather than trying to define her, the invitation is to evoke her. And how do we evoke her? We evoke her through poetry, through song, through music, through art, through nature, through ritual, through doodling.
Heck yeah. I love that. You know, it reminds me of this, the butterfly. I had a shocking moment with a butterfly when I was younger. It was flying and I'm like, ooh, butterfly, it's so pretty. And it landed on my shoulder. And I looked at it, and up close, it is a scary looking bug in the middle of those beautiful wings. Like, and I was just like, oh, like, and I started screaming. My mom's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, a butterfly. She's like, a butterfly. And I, but I feel that like it works with that analogy so well because she's surprising, you know, she's not just beautiful. She has her gnarly bits and she shows them and they're there and it's all a part of the beauty, you know.
I love that. Yes. Yes.
So let's take a minute for you all now to connect with the wild, wise woman in you and doodle her out for a minute. What does she look like? What does she look like? This one's hard to stop. I'm having a hard time. Minute's up, y'all, but still going.
Way more fun than doodling your good girl.
Get to know her, right? So, but I do want to stop because we are going to continue with her story. And I want to do this by first, we're going to keep with this mountain thing for a second. Okay. So at one point you talked about, you know, being a good girl, and now it's kind of like you're just waiting to get to the top of the summit, right? To get any gold stars. And the route there doesn't seem very enjoyable. It doesn't seem very juicy. It's a bit dry and maybe a lot of Tyrant King sort of like, go, go, go. And, you know, it seems really exhausting actually. So I'm curious to hear from you how you see your wise and wild woman going up a mountain, because the truth is that we do have challenges. We do have things we want to achieve. We have mountains, you know, small ones, huge ones, lifelong ones. How do you see your wise and wild woman climbing those mountains?
Oh, it's very resonant in my life right now because a few months ago I was like, I'm so tired of the mountain. I heard myself say it and I was like, well, shit, what does this mean? So I think there's a few different pieces. The first one is that we have to get clear on like, why are we climbing this mountain? Is this our mountain to climb? Did we choose it? Right? Because I think what you said is so perfect. Like life is never going to be free of challenge. Like that's a part of life. And we can't always choose our challenges. But on some cases, you know, we might be climbing up a mountain because we think that we're supposed to be, rather than actually choosing the challenges that come with that particular mountain. When it comes to the actual process of kind of working our way towards the things that are really meaningful for us, for me, the wise and wild woman does it in a way where she stays connected, right? When we're in this energy, we stay connected with ourselves. We stay connected with our bodies. We stay connected and leave space for our feelings and our emotions. We also have kind of an ear both in and out, right? There can be this listening for the timing. Like we look at the seasons of Mother Nature, right? Like we don't want to try to force a bloom in November in the Northern Hemisphere, right? Like there's that sacred timing that we listen for so that we can start to go with the flow of life as it flows through us. And oftentimes, in order to do that, right, to get to that point where we can hear ourselves, before we climb any more mountains, we have to descend into what I call kind of the valley of the wild feminine soul. And that means that we cease some of our incessant doing for a time, that we put down like the need for the gold stars. We put down the need to please. We put down the need to achieve anything. And we start to rediscover what is true for us. we reconnect with what really matters to us, right? We connect with how we feel, which oftentimes in a tyrant king society, feelings are like, they're just a hindrance to getting our shit done rather than this sacred part of being human. So we reconnect with the truth of how we feel. And oftentimes, if we've been in the good girl, there's a whole bunch of the kind of stereotypically like darker, like negative feelings that have been smothered that may need to have some space to move. We reconnect with what we desire, with what brings us to life, what we really want. And we also give plenty of space to grieve. I think this is one of the big pieces. The mountains we couldn't summit. And even the mountains that we could that didn't bring us what we thought they would. Where we didn't find what we were looking for, kind of like that U2 song. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So that's really the first step oftentimes, is to not go up the mountain, is to descend, so that we can kind of recapture this. So as we start to climb the mountain, one, we know that it's our mountain to climb. We have a sense, we can feel in our bodies and our souls whether it's resonant with who we are or not. Is this my mountain? And then it's also this way in which we climb the mountain, right? Is rather than this like race to the top, because of course it's going to be a race to the top if we put all of the things that we're looking for at the top, right? If we believe that everything we want is at the end destination, of course we want to get there as quickly and efficiently as possible. But usually that comes at a cost. And so then as the wise and wild woman, we pay attention to how are we walking up that mountain. And rather than just being about the destination, it becomes about the journey. How do I want this journey to feel? And how can it be as juicy and meaningful to me as possible? And can I give myself permission to rest? Can I give myself permission to just hang out in this really beautiful meadow for a time and dance with my friends? Can I, like eat a delicious meal, right? So it's not this, like, it's just such a different energy. Like I feel it in my body, like the climbing up the mountain, like in the good girl tyrant king, it's like, I feel my arms kind of like up, like it's like sucking me in, and it's very like linear and direct and kind of like, okay, I have to armor myself so I can muscle my way through this, versus this other way is like, yeah, like, just kind of letting it go, letting the arms be free. And so that the journey, rather than it being about like, what do I believe will be true when I get to the top of this mountain? How do I think that I will feel? How do I think that I will be able to finally feel about myself? And noticing and beginning to ponder, well, maybe that's all available to me right now. Maybe it's not actually dependent upon me achieving the summit of this mountain.
Beautiful. It occurs to me too that there's an element of trust, like I don't have to rush, because I trust that what I need will be there when I need it. And that trust can only be built by descending first, by going deep first and finding that truth for you that you walk with. So that was so beautiful, Linda. Thank you. We're going to use this metaphor to go into our longer doodle. So I'm going to invite everyone to go ahead and close your eyes for a second and take a few deep breaths. Get into your body. So we've been talking about such an important element of being in your wise and wild self is really just being in this beautiful body of yours, this feeling, sensing creation that you get to move around in. And just breathe in love for it. It's a really good place to start when we think about our wild and wise self. Just breathing in some love. And as you breathe in this love, think about that doodle you just did of your wise, wild self. And And imagine her climbing a mountain. Maybe climbing isn't even the word. How does she navigate the mountain? How does she explore the mountain? How does she discover the mountain? How does she dance with the mountain? How does she embrace the mountain? And whatever images start popping into your mind right now, I want you to trust those images, trust this process. And from there, just start translating onto your paper what it looks like for your wild, wise self to be with the mountain in whatever way she chooses. And we're going to doodle for 5 minutes. Just let it carry you. You don't have to figure anything out. You don't have to translate exactly what it looks like in your head onto your paper. It's going to be its own expression. Trust that it's taking you to a beautiful place. And I'll see you in 5 minutes. to have an open discussion. So at this time, if you have any questions for Linda that you want to ask her, feel free to jump in with that. And then also we're going to share our doodles. Any part of the doodle process you want to share about today is totally fine. You could share this last doodle if you want to. If you want to tell the whole story of it, you can. You're also welcome to just hold it up and ask what others might see in your doodle to give you some new insights and juicy perspectives. Kind of fun to see what new symbols might pop into your head now that somebody else has seen it. So I invite you to do any of those things. The floor is open.
I have a question for Linda. I don't know, you may have already touched upon it. What is the alternative to the reward punishment relationship with yourself?
I would say that it comes from a deeper connection and more of a trust in ourselves, right? So when we're in the reward punishment, it's more about what we're doing again, rather than how we're being. And I think that when I step out of the reward punishment, it's rather than like, oh, I did the thing that I was supposed to do. When I take out the thing that I was supposed to do, the reward punishment kind of falls away, if that makes sense. It's like without the structure of what I should be doing, the reward and punishment almost ceases to have any meaning, because it's more of, let me stay connected to what is true for me. Can I trust, that what is coming forth at this time is what wants to happen, that I don't need to manage myself so carefully, which we do in so many different areas of our lives. And I recognize that this can be messy and that, again, it can be because we live in a culture where obviously we have external commitments and things that we have to meet. And so it's finding the sweet spot kind of between those two. But I think it's, for me, it comes down to having that greater trust in ourselves and the flow of life as it moves through us.
Thank you.
What comes up for me when you share that trust bit too is like, if I trust that I'm in myself and I'm making this decision that's good and nourishing, not just for me, but maybe for the other person I want to serve. Like if I've decided I want to go do that thing for somebody else, but if it comes from me, whatever the decision, or I don't know, I don't like that word decision, because it's just what's true, right? Like I want to decide less and follow what's true more. And but when I'm in that space, that is rewarding. Like I don't have to wait to go do something. I feel good now. I don't have to get some kind of award to feel better. I don't have to accomplish something to feel better. How do I want to feel in a moment while I'm doing something? That's what comes up for me, and that's such a juicy topic. Oof. It's so hard to unpack it. I'm glad you asked that, Vanessa, because I just think, man, I've had so many like agonizing teacher moments in my education career with that question of like, well, what do I do now?
What do I do instead? Yeah, because it's the water we swim in. And so it's like, when we haven't seen a lot, any other model, it's very difficult to even envision what a relationship with ourselves or other people could look like outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say what it means to me, but then I'll welcome some comments. So as a wild woman, I turned into a ball of energy and became one with the mountains, and we shone like the sun. So what else does anybody see?
Oh, can you keep it up? Oh,
Sure.
look at your shirt. Look
Oh,
at
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
I didn't even know that. That's funny.
Your wild woman dressed you this morning, Jackie.
Yep.
Exactly.
I love it because when I look at it, the first thing I thought of was like, there's mountains everywhere, but she's spinning, and the mountains are below and the mountains are above and the mountains are over here. It like changes your perspective on this sort of like this linear reality, like mountains are on top of the ground and they grow this way. And, like it just shifts all of that. And it feels so, I love that it feels a little messy too. That's really speaking to me.
Mm-hmm. And I love the cyclical quality of it, right? Like the Tyrant King is very, it's like the linearity of the mountain, like up the mountain, down the mountain. And this is very like honoring that it's all also a cycle, right? Like that it's, that we're not just linear beings, that we're also cyclical beings. So I feel that like, and just the curves of the, like there's just, yeah.
Also, I want to point out, Jacqueline, there's on the right side, on the right mountain, it looks like there's an animal there, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. Like it could be like a bird or a reptile or a fish, and it's like we don't know. And it reminds me of the dragon. The dragon is a symbol, like an animal that's made up, doesn't really exist, and that's exactly what you are. It just you get a force from the inside and you kind of make up your own animal, your own animal spirit, the strength and the power of it. And we are in the month of the dragon too, so it kind of goes with that.
Awesome. What's resonating for you, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I don't see the animal, but I'll have to look at it closer, but sometimes it's interesting how this stuff just kind of manifests itself without us even knowing it,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I think is fun about this process, is just being like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't even intend to draw that. I didn't know I was saying that.
Right.
It looks like a cat to me, but I see cats everywhere.
Ooh, yes. I do too.
Can't help myself.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Who else would like to ask a question or share?
I'd love to share mine.
Yeah.
As you know, this is my favorite part of the Doodlecast. Can you see her?
Whoa,
Oh, yeah.
she
Would you
looks
like for us
cool.
to say what we see, or do you want to talk?
Tell me what you see. She's big, so she goes way down to the bottom of the page.
Oh my gosh, she is big.
Wow.
That's awesome. I love how she takes up the whole page.
Mm-hmm.
She is, like Linda was talking about, being small. She is not small.
Mm-mm. There's all those, like, I feel these like radiating lines of energy, right? In the center, there's all these different colors, but then even her hair is kind of coming out, and there's almost something like mermaidish.
Yes,
Like, I don't know if those are the mountains down at the bottom, but they kind of feel like there's like the mermaid quality of the tail
right.
at the bottom there.
It's almost like a Wonder Woman armor, like her body. It just feels like invincible. And her hair just kind of all over the place, just kind of strengthening. There's this kind of very power and colorful at the same time, fun, not just strong for its own sake, but just also fun and supple. Like a fish as well. I'm seeing fish again, like you're saying, mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this wildness quality about her, but there's also sweetness. Like, Wild Woman doesn't have to be mean. Like, just because we're not the good girl, the opposite isn't mean. And that's what this makes me think about, and that lovely paradox. And she also has all the elements. I see all the elements in her.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah.
She looks so content.
Yeah.
Like her face is just like, here I am.
Mm-hmm.
No, I love all that. Thank you for those reflections. My intention when I was drawing it was she is the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
she is the destination. She is the journey. She's the whole thing.
Oh, super. Cool.
She just like rises up out of it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's so much more than you thought it was going to be.
It was really fun to do. Really fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for those reflections. It was really beautiful.
Yeah.
I'll go if it's okay.
Yes.
The good girl in me asked for permission. So I'll be glad to hear your thoughts on this surrealist doodle today. it starts here and it ends there.
I love how lively it looks. It's so, there's movement and it's just looks so vibrant and alive. And I love that.
I love how
I
hearts
also
are.
love that she gets, oh,
Go
go ahead.
Go ahead, Linda.
Oh, she gets arms, right? Like it's like the arms become like these agents, you know, of doing, right? That are connected to how she's feeling. And I see this like radiant heart center there on the right with like the yellow and the radiant heart, like that energy in the hands also. And then this kind of the heart in the head. I love that. Like I feel this integration of, you know, like again, we don't want to make our logical minds bad, right? But there's this integration of the heart and the body and the mind and all of it, and this kind of energy down below her too on the right side.
Yeah, I was really resonating with like the heads becoming hearts, like guided by the heart instead of the head. The first one to me looks like, you know, the spirals underneath, like she's connected to some spirit there, to some her inner creativity. And then she takes it and she's like, oh, I've got these little things by her hands. Oh, I've got something more fun to play with here. And then as she moves and plays with them, it sort of all integrates into this more powerful, integrated creature. What do you think, Vanessa?
Yes, a lot of your comments resonate with me. Definitely the term that I had was creature that evolves. You know, these are springboards, you know, that are evolving with the heart, like you say, integrated, and it's getting bigger and bigger where it's more practical to have your heart in your head. You don't have to separate it. And here I was trying kind of to put the moon in the heart and also the sun inside the heart. It's kind of all together at the same time. And I didn't even notice about the arms, but it's true. And I did in the other doodles as well. It's the arms, like Linda was saying, or we're just kind of inside and tucked in and just kind of, you know, stiff. And then they kind of open up, and then they have stars, you know, inside. And then at the end, it's just pure light. And if you notice, there's no mountains. The mountains or in our heads, it's just all flowing and just fun and spacious. And I put a little bit of water there because for me that's just the springboard to life, you know, for myself. So yeah, thank you so much for your comments. They make me happy.
Is everybody happy to stick around for a few more minutes?
Yes.
So more people can share. Okay, because I just love these and I don't want to stop. I'm good to go. I can be here for a bit, but I respect anybody's time. So if you need to, that's okay too. All right, who wants to share?
I can share. I wrote enjoy the process, so I enjoyed the process. This was the first one. The nice one and the rebel. And she turned into this, and I'm fascinated with the connection between all of us because I'm the mountain as well. So
Yes.
Oh,
God.
and the kitty.
Yeah.
Can you bring it closer so we can read? And the mountain stays still. Be quiet.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Beautiful.
I just love the kitty's cloak.
Yeah.
Like it feels like almost like a globe or the world.
it is.
Yeah.
It's a global kitty.
That's such a beautiful way. I have to show you because back with my little good girl, I had the world on her shoulders, you know, and now it's showing like such a beautiful transformation, like to just be the world. You have to carry the world, be the world. I don't know. That's awesome. Love that.
Thank you.
Can you
I also felt like the cloak, there was something in it that almost reminded me of a ladybug, like because they're and like the integration of these two halves, right? Because there's that space in between, so there's that discernment, but then it's still connected, right? Like there's just this like there's something in that, like I could almost feel that energy of like the butterfly, like the cloak could open and it could close and it could open.
Nilly, what do you associate with cats? Like, what's the meaning of cats for you?
I've always been with cats. It's one of my medicine. I mean, for me, laughter, creativity, water, and cats are my childhood medicines. So,
Mhm.
so they appear, and I've been followed. I mean, today I was doing another work and it showed up. So I guess today is like my cat day.
It showed up for me at a doodle meeting I had earlier today too. I had a cat, and this is from earlier. I was drawing them as well. I feel you. They're so like,
When kid
go ahead.
when
Yeah.
kitties show up in dreams, they can often be indicative of our relationship with our wild feminine energy because they are very kind of feminine, sovereign creatures.
Oh, look at that.
Uh,
Oh,
Oh, and
Success
check her
later
out. She's
sleep.
playing.
I love that.
It only comes to you if you ignore it.
Oh my gosh. This is awesome.
These are amazing.
Success later, sleep first. Yes. Hooray! The workshop.
It's gorgeous.
Oh, I love it. These are so fun. Anybody else want to share something? Linda, do you want to share? Yeah.
I'll share mine. Yeah. I just love to hear what people see in it. You might see what's on the back, which is always intriguing to me also.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Now I can't not look at that. I love that like it fades into the background. Like
Mm-hmm.
she steps into she is now leading the show. Like that, it's not that the other stuff has to disappear for her to show up. It's a both and. She's there, but she's leading the show and the others can still be there. Like, you know, we can't like just get rid of parts of ourselves.
Right.
No. And the effort often, and when we do try to do that, because that can happen, right? Is when we find the good girl, we're like, ugh, this is gross, disgusting. I don't like this part about myself. And rather than get curious and compassionate with ourselves, we get stuck in the same loop of judgment.
Yeah, I mean that really like when I first started doing therapy and stuff, I remember beating myself up that I couldn't get rid of these things. Like it was almost like a perfectionist thing
Right.
driving it. Like I'm not perfect because this is still inside of me, or I still act in this way sometimes. And when a mentor said to me, "Oh, it's never going to go away. Just think about turning the volume down on it and turning the volume up on something else." I was like, "Oh, I'm so relieved." Like it's such a relief.
Yes. They hang around and sometimes they pipe up, right? Like it happens.
And on the doodle, I like to have the leaves upside down. They make me think a little bit like a medicine woman, you know, who takes her herbs and has a place where she can all have them and dry them and then use them for her potions and things. So it's like a way of healing herself, you know, without like help from others. That's kind of what I got, the power, you know, of the medicine woman. I don't know if that rings anything to you or not at all.
Oh, I love that. And that connection with the earth, right? That to me is very indicative of when I experience that kind of wise
Even if,
wild
with the
woman
blouse you're wearing,
energy.
I mean, it's just you. The colors you have on today, it's just that. Like Jackie, like your wild woman, just dressed you today.
It's in a colorful mood today.
Yeah, not just the color, but the earth. You know, the earth and
Yeah.
the grass and the flowers, and it's like who you are. You know.
Your doodle looks like a magical scene to me. It looks like anything could happen. Like it's sort of sparkly. There's a lot of movement. You know, she looks to me like she's completely in herself and not thinking about what she looks like or what she's supposed to be doing. It just looks like there's tons of possibility. Like it looks very fertile to me.
I love that aspect of Wild Woman, that it's not all planned out, that we get to be spontaneous or be surprised. That there's a lot of, I think you said it, like there's mystery again, which makes life way more fun and interesting. I don't want to know it all.
And my thing was even, let's see what happens, right? Which is such that energy of possibility. Yeah, it's like, let's just go in and see what happens. Yeah, not trying to control the outcome so much.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I felt it like very much the connection with the earth and the movement and the flowing energy of yeah, kind of being in a dance with all of existence.
Yeah, she looks like she's doing some cool, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, if you all will indulge me, I would love to share.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And I'm not going to say anything. You all can.
Ooh.
Ooh, yeah. I love her.
Oh, I love that. That there's like some jester energy there, you know, like she could play some tricks on you and it would be really fun to be with her.
I love that. That tarot card has been coming up a lot for me lately. We talked about that.
Yep.
And the pink around her is like, it could be either the arms, or it could be, you know, one of these glow in the dark thing you get when you go to concerts.
Oh.
You know, that they're like wands. It's like gives you some kind of magical power.
Like a
Just
neck.
light up, you know,
Mm.
a whole universe all on your own, and with the stars, it kind of blends in together. It's like you're the light. I mean, obviously with your last name, the light and just happening. Yeah, stuff from the children's stories, you know, storybook time with the colors and magic and flowers that are growing out of you. It's just something about expectation, you know, something magical is going to
Yeah.
come. I love it.
Well, it looks like you have some element of she's the mountain too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yours.
Yeah, it's like embracing yourself was coming up for me.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely feeling
Yeah, I
that.
feel that tenderness. Like there's such a tenderness and like the eyes closed and just kind of, it looks like, yeah, the embracing of herself and the embracing of the mountain. Kind of this like, oh, just that softness and love and tenderness. Mm.
As you say that, it makes me think about like being tender to ourselves when we're in hard places, because these lines are like harsher and more rigid, you know? And so just embracing those rough times or those jagged edges and taking it all in too makes me think about that. And it's interesting because I wrote down be in the moment for my intention, which I feel like she's really being in the moment. So all of our doodles seem to come back to our intention for today, which is really beautiful. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, y'all. Love it. Just move the spotlight. Yeah. So I just, encourage you to keep these out for yourselves. Keep playing with it. See, like a lot of us were wondering how we could evoke her more or play more with her throughout our days. And I think visual reminders are so important for that. It's the other things are very loud and very conditioned and many messages. So we have to start giving ourselves many more other messages. And the more we can keep it right in front of our faces, the better. I know I got all kinds of in front of my face stuff here. So it is definitely one of my strategies. But yes, I really, really enjoyed this, Linda. Beautiful. Can we all just say yay or maybe snap or something? That was so.
Thank you all. It was so wonderful to spend time with you all this morning and seeing your doodles and your experience of how that wise and wild woman energy moves through you, and just like really feeling it in the collective space.
Yes, it was beautiful. Beautiful moment to share with all of you. And I'll be sharing the links for all of Linda's work. Linda, is there anything you'd like to uplift in particular as we close down, or would you just like them to generally follow you?
Yeah, I mean the new up and coming thing is that I wrote a book that will be self-publishing later this year, where I go through and really kind of flesh out and dive into some of these ideas of the inner cage and how I've experienced them in my life, and more of this process of the heroine's journey of how do we come home to ourselves. So yeah, if you can subscribe to my newsletter, I'll let you all know when that is ready. I'm really excited to kind of give birth to that in the world.
Yeah, I'm excited to read it. That's amazing. Congrats. What a big undertaking. Oh, I will share with you the link to subscribe and connect with her in any way you'd like to. And thank you, everybody in this room, your spirit today, your energy, your doodles, your conversation. It was beautiful. And everybody watching is really going to have a treat because you're here. So applause like you as well. You can find out more about our creations and coaching at howdoodle.com. But until next time, keep sparking that creativity with your wild and wise self.